But today, I want to keep it all about deals. I mean, we're about a month out, well, 45 days away from the event. And every time we jump on these calls, I had to bring up the event, and I bring up the event because if you, for some reason, are missing out on coming to the event because you didn't know it existed, well, then that would be an absolute no-no for me, because these are the events that kick off and absolutely change the direction of your life. And I say it because of the people in the room. It's not because you see Zach on stage or Nick on stage or Chris on stage. It's because you end up sitting next to somebody that says something that changes your perspective on how things work. There's plenty of people that show up at our events that have done many real estate deals, and they learn one little nuance in the deal structure that absolutely changes the projection of their business. Or I heard from one of our immersion members, Justin. He said, I'm bringing my son this time, so that way he could see the bigger picture and maybe be able to affect the next generation. So maybe they don't have to work as hard as he did in one of the jobs that he's doing. Instead, start investing in real estate younger and younger, so you can affect that next generation. So you guys go ahead and grab that ticket. Make sure you show up at the event, ready, prepared. And then the rest of today, what we're going to do is we're going to dive in. I brought Nathan on here. I'll let Nathan introduce himself if you don't know Nathan. And then we'll talk about his deal, because this deal had a default. And we're going to show you how we were able to actually work through that deal. Pivot. We even have Nick on here as well. We are now blessed with Nick because he's got his blue shirt with his blue eyes. He's going to tell us all about the buyer side with Nathan as well, because I know they did a bunch of collaborations and saw some really great things that came out of it. All right, Nathan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself as I bring up this deal structure sheet.
Hi, everyone. My name's Nathan. I live out in the state of Washington. Grew up originally in the state of Iowa, where this deal is at. I don't know how much more. Oh, I'm a high 6 member within the community. Been with the community coming up on 4 years now. So that's about the gist within the community.
Tell us some of your hobbies, Nathan.
Well, I'm a dad. That's a hobby, I think. So I got a 2-year-old, and then I coach basketball, played basketball back in college and high school days. So that's taken up a good amount of time right now too. So I'm enjoying it, but I'd say those are the 2 things that are preoccupying a lot of my time: the son and basketball.
Love it. And take us back 4 years ago. Walk us through your journey, because you actually started at 90 Day Jumpstart with Russell Ham at the exact same time. This is like if you look back in the old videos, bring it all the way back. Nathan and Russell Ham starting their journey together when I used to coach 90 Day Jumpstart. So why don't you tell people why you joined and kind of your journey so far here, and then we'll dive in.
Yeah, I've been around real estate since I was 6 because of my parents. So they bought a lot of foreclosure homes, and then we did fix and flips. And so I got to witness and help with a lot of the labor and work behind it all. I'm not the best with my hands in that regard. And when I came across this through Bigger Pockets and read the Real Estate on Terms book, it intrigued me instantly. And so that's how I got into the community. Zach's right. I joined a similar time frame as Russell. Him and I have gone through all stages within the community. So
yep, starter. I mean, you went from 90 Jumpstart to starter to immersion to high 6.
Correct.
Love it. And you primarily buy where?
Right now, all of our focus is going to be in the state of Iowa. Originally, I was buying in Washington, Oregon, and Iowa, but now the focus is just going to be in the state of Iowa from afar.
And it's just many people ask how you buy virtually. So how is that? How do you set up that system? How are you working and buying real estate virtually?
Yeah, great question. So I grew up in Iowa. My parents own their own real estate brokerage, so I leverage my sister and brother on things as it pertains to anywhere within an hour of where I grew up. So I just keep it around in those neck of the woods. And then real estate attorney wise, I grew up with him. So him and I just ping each other back and forth on the contracts from there. So really just leveraging the relationships that I grew up around in my hometown.
All right, we'll walk through the deal and then we'll open up for questions. Please bombard Nathan with questions. All right. So let me pull this up. As I'm pulling this up, why don't you give us some background? Maybe talk about the beginning of this deal. So before we jump in, I show you the numbers here and we walk through the next section of the deal. Maybe talk us about the first buyer, where you found them, and then talk about what happened. And that way we can walk through the default process as well.
Yeah, sounds good. So this property was an expired listing back in late 2020. And so I got this on a lease purchase contract in about January of 2021. Took about 2.5 months to fill the property. I was getting a lot of activity at that time as well. Eventually sold the property to a business owner within that area. And away we went. That was the first one that I sold to where I was in the middle. And they were good. They were paid on time. They paid their deposits, their payday ones. There was the initial, and then the second one was like a $5,000 one. That one was a little bit behind, but other than that, they were a good tenant buyer of just being prompt with their payment until towards the tail end. So about 1.5 years into their 24-month buyer term, they started reaching out and talking about the process of buying this property. And if you are following along with everything there, 2021 interest rates were pretty low in the 3% range at that time, and they bumped all the way up to 7%. And their comments back to us, and Nick, you can chime in as well because you were part of those conversations too if I miss anything, but just mainly the financial situation. They didn't feel like they were going to be able to get the loan, so they we talked about it a little bit more, and ultimately they came up with the decision of being willing to walk away from the property, and so they moved out from there. I can stop it in case there's any questions from that standpoint.
Yeah, Nick, did you want to chime in or anything?
No, I was just opening my mic for like in case anyone has questions. These buyers didn't follow it through. They didn't even make applications. So that's the main thing that we're looking for from all of our tenant buyers. They have to be making application for their loan. These people didn't even follow it through and make applications. So it was best to part ways. And we actually, Nathan, I have a feeling, is going to share the successful conclusion of this deal.
Nick, when you say like, let's pretend that somebody on this call, this is like their first experience with Wicked Smart and they don't know real estate language. When you say make application, can you just expand a little bit?
Sure. So they brought up all these concerns about saying that, and Nathan, you can jump in here and correct me if I'm wrong, but they brought up all these concerns probably about 6 months, and that's a little longer than we want. We want them to apply for their mortgage earlier than that, but we were where we were with these guys. They brought up all these concerns about the fact that they weren't going to be able to get it because mortgage rates were going higher. Then they started saying, well, comps in the area are lower than what it is. And everything was a farce because then they started bringing up the property condition and, oh, this won't pass inspection. And we had to have the whole conversation where they took the home as is and they were responsible for all maintenance, repair, and upkeep over the course of their duration of their rent-own agreement. So it was all just a farce. They were trying to back out of the deal and see if they could get their money back, their deposit, but their down payment is 100% non-refundable. So it was their decision to move on and not make application for the loan. But we usually, all of our contracts actually have a provision in them that requires the tenant buyer to start making loan application 10 to 12 months before the end of the lease. That may seem pretty excessive, given that the majority of the agreements that we're setting up are 24-month agreements. However, we found that it takes that long to be able to get them connected with a lender, get all the documentation together. It's a lot of back and forth with the lender. And we find that if they're able to make application 10 to 12 months before the end of their lease, they're that much more likely to be successful and be able to close on this before the end of their term.
Anything else to add there, Nathan?
Yeah, I saw Kevin's question real quick. There was 5.5% down that they left on the table when they went away. So it was 17,000 out of the 300,000. But to complement Nick's statements that he made there, one of the things that I learned when going through that process was this buyer was really focused on talking to one lender and one lender only. And we even encouraged him to even talk to other lenders, and more so a lender that would be able to get him a mortgage that's more than just within his own bank. So more of a mortgage broker. I think I'm correct on that term, Nick, but someone
Yeah,
that can
you
actually
are.
go shop for a loan versus I'm at Wells Fargo and I only give a Wells
Gotcha.
Fargo mortgage type of thing. So
No, you're exactly right, Nathan. He was just the buyer was very combative because he was getting all of his source of information from someone. I assume it was a friend or a family member, but he wouldn't even make application, wouldn't even show us proof that he made application for his loan. So he decided that it wasn't in his best interest to go forward with the deal. So we took the property back.
Karina, I hope I'm saying your name right. Karina, before I answer your question, Pete, if you could just throw in the chat, just in case this is like the first experience he's had with Wicked Smart, maybe just toss in the master's class link in there as well, because if you haven't through our 50-minute master's class, a lot of that will get cleared up with our process of who our buyers are, who our sellers are, and how we're gonna structure these 3 paydays on this deal. That might be a great place if you haven't gone through that. But to ask her question now, Nick, it's her first time here. Do you follow their credit history during the time of the property until they apply?
That's a good question. So we're getting now, I think whenever I'm talking that everyone knows what I'm saying. So feel free to stop me if you don't understand at any point. We're at the beginning, before we even decided to do a deal, it's like a part of our process, our buyer process, that we have to have their screening report back from the credit enhancement agency that we work with, and that's my credit team. That's going to tell us, and we require them to go ahead and do that and pay for that. It's $50 per applicant. That's going to tell us credit, criminal, sexual harassment, which really we just want to make sure they're not an axe murderer, of course. But what we're really looking for out of there is how long it's going to be until they're mortgage ready. And a big component of their screening report is also their debt to income ratio, meaning that what is their monthly income to like what percentage would the housing payment be? What is their front end, which means before they get their loan, so when they start working with you, and also what their back end, they call it, which is once they get a loan, all those ratios. And we usually, as part of our buyer package, require that we have that information printed, their screening report, and that lists all their debts and everything. And one of the conditions of all of our contracts, Karina, is that all of our rent-to-own buyers stay enrolled with the credit enhancement over the course of their lease. That usually goes in 6 to 9 month increments, if I'm not mistaken. And then it gives the credit after that. It goes through a cycle, and it gives the credit. You got to let the credit catch up And then they'll determine with you if another round is needed of that credit enhancement in order to get you to a point where you're mortgage ready. But we're finding that a lot of our rental home buyers, as long as they're following the process, they're getting loans anywhere from 13, 15 months, 18 months, 22 months, inside of that window of 24 months. There are extenuating circumstances, of course, where a buyer has a particular situation and we need to extend it a little longer, like 30 or 36 months, but we find the majority of our buyers are able to qualify within 24 months. Did that help answer your question, or did I go off the rails on that?
Well, thank you. She gave you a smiley with heart eyes. So you're good.
Awesome.
You're
Sounds
good.
good.
I think you're good. All right, let's throw up this deal here and we'll walk through it. All right. So let's walk through this deal. All right, so you've already taken, you purchased the property, expired listing, you sold it already. Your notes down here at the bottom, if you can see it, it says that you made $16,737.98. That is the accountant in you, Nathan.
Yeah.
From that buyer, from the original buyer. So now let's look at this next deal. So,
So Zach, can I pause
Yeah,
before
please.
we go into the deal? Because, so that tenant buyer moved out in October.
yeah, okay.
End of
So-
October. Yeah.
Yeah, the end of October. So then Nick and I collab on what to do next. So the next step was we would put it on the market to sell traditionally. And so we got a realtor. We weren't getting any bites, maybe had 2 or 3 viewings over from November to January, early January. So probably it was like a 60 to 75 day period, I think, Nick, off the top of my head. And
60 sounds
approached-
right.
yeah,
Yeah, you're right on that.
I just approached Nick again. So as you can see on the deal structure worksheet, the term that we agreed to with the seller is 36 months, but there's 2+ extensions there's 2 6-month extensions that we have on our lease purchase agreement. So really I could push it out to 48 months, and that gets me to May of 2025. And so I came back, I brought it up to Nick that we had a lot of interest in this area, or on this property the first time. Why don't we consider testing it out again on a rent to own market and see what we could do? And he agreed based off the 2 extensions that we have, and that provided us a tight window, but still enough time to put a buyer into the home and have success with that. And not even less than a week after putting it back on the market, we came across these type of buyers. So
Love it. So challenge pops up. You go ahead, you reach out to your coach and you say, hey, what's the strategy? Let's brainstorm and figure out what the strategy is. One route was, hey, let's go ahead and try to sell this thing traditionally. You went on there, didn't get a ton of activity. So you and Nick reconvened.
Zach, it wasn't my idea, just to be quick. It was Nathan's, and I was like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? That's a terrific idea. So kudos to you, Nathan, for thinking of that.
Oh, I'd even say, I think at that time, it was early on with interest rates being kind of in the middle of, I can't remember the whole time frame and where interest rates were at, but it was like, why don't we just try to do this and pop it? And then with little to no activity, it was just like, okay, let's
It was easy.
propose this. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, thanks for walking that through. All right, we'll get all the way through the end of the deal here, and then we'll open up for questions. So Nathan, it's a lease purchase. You got 36 months. So what's the time frame left before you place this buyer in the property? How much time do you have left?
Yeah, we have May of 25. So that's 26 months.
Okay, so you got 26 months. Okay. So you go ahead and you sell this property for 3,099 again.
Yeah, the first time we sold it for 299.9. This time we sold it for 3,099.
Awesome. Okay. So you increased your price. So I love going over these types of deals because most people's biggest worries when they get started is what happens if a buyer defaults? What happens if a buyer defaults? Nathan got the best deal possible on the front end. Buyer defaulted. He collected some money, had to, obviously pay to upkeep the property. Went ahead and sold it for $10,000 more on the second round. Made a pivot. He was able to communicate with his coaches, made a pivot, and now we got this new buyer in the property. So buyer then comes with what? What's the non-refundable deposit on this property?
More than 10%, $32,000.
And did that come all up front, or is this coming over the course?
It came all up front.
All right.
We got
Place
that
another
upside
buy
down.
on the property, 32K. You doubled your payday one, increased your purchase price. I didn't even know this. I didn't look at the deal structure before you came on. So if you see the excitement in my face, it's because I'm just realizing this deal.
How good it is. Yeah.
So you increased your purchase price and you got double the amount of a payday one when this buyer defaulted.
Yeah, and a little bit about that buyer. They're business owners as well, and they just need the seasoning in order to become mortgage ready at this point. And they recently just sold one of their. They recently just sold their home, is where the down payment came from, and they just wanted to move closer to some family.
So a much better buyer, former homeowner so we feel super comfortable about them.
Okay. Okay, cool. So monthly payment to the mortgage, $1,689.92. Payment from the buyer. Good.
I'll stop you there too, because in the lease purchase agreements, this is important as well. So when I first signed this agreement with the seller, it was $50 less than that 16. So it was $1,639.92. And in the agreement, it says that our cap is $50 above anything above the original agreed upon monthly payment when we signed the agreement.
Okay.
And because it's a fixed variable or an adjustable interest rate, it fluctuated with the market and whatnot. So it actually capped, it's really higher than that. So the seller's paying like $150 to $200 above that, but we capped ourselves to be able to stay at a good market rent rate. So when we did go to market, we were able to be aggressive, and that's why we acquired a lot of inquiries to begin with, and eventually found this buyer too.
All right, let's take a pause there. I'm seeing some of these people, I see some eyes glossing over. So in section 2, in our agreement on the short form lease agreement, so the agreement that you're buying the property with from the seller, you can put a cap on how much your payment is going to be. Nathan, smartly, if that's a word, set himself up where it is a word, right?
It is now.
Yeah, well, that's what they call Zachisms. And I heard this thing, and it was like, well, if I don't have the right word, I'll just make up the word. So that way I have it now. So smartly, Nathan went ahead and put a cap on the monthly payment. So that way he was not going to have to deal with the variable rate. Because we get questions all the time. Are you able to buy a property with a variable rate? Well, you can if you're protecting yourself. So although that adjustment went up, it was just the interest, right? The principal was not affected by that. Just want some clarity.
Smartly's a word, Zach. You good?
Okay. You looked it up?
Yep.
The principal was affected with that, Zach. But it also, the payment also went down. So our payday 2 increased during that time frame as well.
Love it. Okay. So because he put that in there with the variable rate, if it goes down, he's benefiting, right? Because he's getting more spread. But if it goes up, it's capped. So he's protecting his downside with this creative financing deal. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's awesome. I'm sure that's going to generate questions. We'll take them in a minute. All right. So your payday 2, let's say you're clearing $267.91. assuming, right, that variable rate doesn't go down. So that's
Right.
$6,400 in cash flow in the next 24 months. Nathan, quick question. The 16,737, that total amount that you made from that buyer, did that include the cash flow that you had in that property while that first buyer was in it?
Yes, that included everything, including the November to February expenses that was incurred during that time.
Got it. So it's your
So
net
really,
on it.
yeah,
Okay,
yep.
awesome. Okay. So then your payday 3 is you marked up the property 42,000. You're getting roughly $350 a month in principal pay down. So that's $8,400 in principal pay down. You've already collected 32,000, so you got 18 grand on the back. So assuming this goes all the way to the 24 months, which is very likely it will with somebody that needs
My
to see.
list where it said,
Yeah, you're right. You're just, when you're right, you're right. You're getting $57,000 projected here right now that'll be collected over time.
Correct, plus the 16.7 from the first part. So about whatever that adds up to, 73,000.
73K and dealt with the default. Extremely encouraging, right? When you're dealing with challenges, it's very likely you're actually able to create a better deal. It happens to us all the time. And I say all the time, like we have about an 80 to 90% success rate. So you're going to have that default anywhere from 1 to 2 buyers per 10 properties you sell. You're going to deal with some challenges. But if you're structured right, if you bought the property right, if you got the right support in order to make these decisions, it goes a long way to set yourself up for success. Let's open up for questions. Judy's asking, I'm sorry, before we jump over there, I'll take one. Judy's asking, what about the principal pay down from the term of the first buyer? Was that in the total profits in the 16,000?
Well, no, because I didn't collect on them. But that's part of the 57,000 from this buyer though.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, because you made up for it because you include the first price. Got it. Okay. Joel, did you disappear? Are you still having
No,
fun?
I'm still here. I must have gone down the stack after I put my hand down.
Yeah, you shut. You're right to the bottom.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
sorry about that. I was just curious on a different level with Nathan. You said you've been here about 4 years. How many deals have you done so far?
Yeah, so I've acquired I think the number is 12 takens, and I've been able to sell 3 of them. I'm closing on one. Well, not from a buyer. I'm closing with a seller on March 1st on the 3rd taken.
Gotcha. And I was curious about, you said you're living in the Northwest, but you're going to target where you're from. Is there a specific reason for that? Just curiosity. And thanks.
Yeah, cost of homes for one. I'm amazed by how many leads that were generated within this area that I was in for this property. So I'm gonna stick with that type of thing.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Yeah, I'll throw just a little bit of context in there as well. I mean, Nathan's right outside of Seattle, Washington. So a lot of the deals in which, because I was working with Nathan at the very beginning of this process, a lot of the deals we were generating happened to be like condos, or the deals we're getting under agreement, condos in like the Portland or Seattle area, which, I mean, there's some that you can get those deals done, but the way in which we're exiting, it just significantly limits the pool of buyers there. And some of the deals that Nathan was taking on at the time, to his, I mean, for him just getting after it, which, is obviously awesome. But some of them were just, kind of hoping that we were going to get a deal done. There wasn't a proof of concept there with high-end condos and things like that. So I think he made a good strategic decision by going out, because Nathan and I sat probably for 12 months, went back and forth on if Nathan should start prospecting in Iowa, because he knew the area, because the price range was different, because the buyer was different, family-oriented area. And then I think you picked up steam as soon as you started doing it over there. Yep. Not to say you can't do deals in Seattle. There's plenty of people that can. It just, Nathan's got great connections a great credibility for him and his family in that area. You work with what you got. Heidi.
Hey there. I had a question in regards to the payday to the monthly payment to seller with the variable interest rates. I know you put the cap there for $50, but if the variable interest rate goes down, were you still paying the 39, I guess it was at the time? Or did that also
I would-
change?
Yeah, great question. I'm gonna pay whatever. My highest is gonna be that 1690 number. If it goes down, we're gonna benefit from that.
Okay, so you just keep track on what's going on. Oh, how do you keep track of that?
Yep, so I am monitoring the mortgage statements and making sure that I gather those when I go in and make the payment. And then also get notices about anything that gets adjusted from that payment.
Okay, so on a monthly basis, you just track it basically. Okay, awesome. Thank
Yep,
you, appreciate it.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, and then the main one would be, there's a letter that would come in that's talking about any adjustments that would be had on the mortgage. So just making sure I'm keeping an eye on those too.
Okay, perfect. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, how do you remember if you're structuring the way we structure the deals, you're only liable for the principal, interest, taxes, and insurance on it. His payment just happens to be variable versus a consistent 30-year AM. Fixed. So he's only liable for whatever the expense are.
Okay, okay, got it. Thank you.
Good to see you, Heidi. Wendy, what's up?
Hi, Zach. I have a question. So if I'm not mistaken, there's 26 months left until the end of the term. Is that correct?
Yep.
And Nathan, are you giving the second tenant buyer 24 months to qualify for a mortgage?
Yep.
Okay. Just in case if there's a hiccup in delay in them getting a mortgage, or if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, have you talked to your coach of potentially what you're going to do? Because you only have 2 months in between, right? The time that you give your second tenant buyer and the time that you have to cash the seller out.
Yeah, I can give a little bit, and then Nick or Zach, if you want to chime in, but I'm comfortable because they put 10% down for one. Two, I'll just think about ways of pivoting. I'm a nerd, so I got spreadsheets that go out 2 years. So I feel like I can figure out how to pivot, or even go back to the seller and ask for an extension, knowing that the buyer is pretty darn close of cashing me out to where I can cash her and them out. So that's where my initial thoughts go. I don't know if there's anything else you two would want to add.
Yeah, and Wendy, the buyers, I remember on the day of their signing with the attorney, when they were signing and funding that 32,000, they were getting cold feet. And they were like, well, we're just starting a business and everything. One of the couple was extremely conservative, and the other one was like, I've heard what I need to hear. Let's go ahead and do this. And they were trying to get us to verbally agree to, if you aren't able to cash this out in 24 months, you can have another 6-month extension. You can have a year extension. But because I knew that there was a clock, or because Nathan and I knew that there was a clock ticking on the other end, we were just open and candid with them and let them know we don't have another 6 months to give you. So I didn't tell them exactly what it was, but I said, we have maybe a month or two, but that's it. So we don't have more to give you. So let's stick to 24 months. If you're following our system and following our process and doing everything that you have to contractually, there is no reason why you wouldn't qualify for your loan. And that put them at ease, and they were ready to go.
Then I'll just hit on Wendy. I've had plenty of conversations with sellers. Hey, Mr. Seller, our buyers are pretty close to the end here. They're in the application process. We don't control this at this point in time. We may need a slight extension. in order to get these buyers to the finish line. They're almost there. They're in application. They're just self-employed. They just need a little bit more time. They're very highly qualified. We may need, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is. You're just in close communication with the seller the entire time. I mean, they're excited because it's almost over. And they're about to get paid.
And Wendy, that's nice. That's nice to know that we have it in our back pocket, but I don't want to going into it. I didn't want the buyers to think, oh, well, okay, I can take my time and not make application until like 3 to 6 months until the end of my lease. I wanted them to be on it, and I wanted Nathan and I to be on it with them to make application and follow the process through, because there's no reason why they wouldn't succeed inside of 24 months.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you.
Nathan, how much equity does the seller have?
84,000.
Okay, so I'm just throwing this out there. This isn't necessarily for this deal. But for any deal, could Nathan have went to the seller after you collected $32,000 and said, hey, I can give you 10 grand right now if you want to transfer title and give you a portion of your money now? Could he do that? And could a sub 2 deal at that point in time and renegotiate that deal? He absolutely could have. So that for any of these deals, you can now go back and renegotiate with the seller. Get an extra extension or get a sub 2. Very possible.
Yeah, and then when Nick says they had cold feet, they literally went and talked with the attorney for an hour, didn't sign. We had to talk to them. Then they went back that same day and signed. So it was cold feet.
We went, dug into our toolkit and got them out some wool socks. So we're good to go.
All right, Tony, you're up.
I was just wondering, how long did it take you to get the first buyers out, and what was the process?
I had good conversations with them throughout the 24, but throughout the 18 months they were there. Kind of pretty much let them be for the most part, and only reached out whenever payments weren't on time. And had a good process with them. To answer your question, they moved out that same month. I didn't have any issues.
Open communication, open dialogue. The buyers that go through the education portion at the beginning of it are more likely to just move out because they understand the process. Not to say that's going to happen every time. It won't, but.
Well, not for their lack of trying. They tried to get out of it and get the money back, but.
I think we already hit that. All right. Any other questions?
I think there's a big thing from Tony's question though. Just expectations with buyers or not, but just like we talk about with sellers, always creating that next expectation of what's next within the process. Just on the flip side with buyers, in my mind, it's if someone isn't paying on time, then the conversation is, okay, when's the expectation that this is going to get paid? And holding them to that. And if they say, I'll get it to you by Friday, well, you're going to give them a call and you're going to ask them, where is my rent money for this month type of thing. And making sure that it's not you're being laxed on that end, and making sure that payments are coming in when they say that, making sure that their words are taking the actions that should be in place based off conversations that you're having. And then moving them through the system of sending the letters that Nick and the buyer side has done. So not saying that that's always going to be as smooth as that, but I think it carries weight.
But you have to be on it.
Yeah.
As far as the calls and the letters and everything like that.
Awesome deal, my man. Way to keep working. How about we give him a nice golfer's clap? Not too loud.
Thank you.
But just good enough.
Appreciate it.
Great job, Nathan.
Like he hit a bogey. Good job.
Well, appreciate your help too with it all, Nick. So.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome.
Awesome. Well, great deal, Nathan, as always. I looked like we had one more person pop up in here. What kind of renter programs do you use for placement infiltration to make sure you're finding qualified buyers? Nick, before you jump into the buyer process, Nick's only gonna be able to scratch the surface. He created an entire module, and then you have like I don't know how many pages of a buyer process you've written out and fine-tuned in QLS. So Andrew, if you haven't got through QLS, Pete, if we could just toss in the link for the QLS Home Study course, that is the foundational building blocks of all of this in order to get these deals done. But Nick, if you don't mind just slightly scratching the surface, because you're here on a sit down, so we need some sort of buyer seminar.
And I'm happy that this question came up because I just went through the buyer process and actually the entire mod on that's focused on buyers in the QLS and really streamlined it, trimmed it up, got rid of stuff that's not applicable anymore, and really get it dialed in. So yeah, have a look at I believe it's mod 9 in the QLS, and very specifically in there, have a look at the buyer process. That's going to give you a 10,000 foot view of how what you're doing once you have a property, all the way to the closing table, the attorney signing, and that's where the buyer signs and you get paid with their initial down payment. So I think that will really help you.
Thanks for being on, Nathan. Thanks for popping up and having this deal structure.